What's going on, guys? Welcome into the Postgame show. This game was absolutely trash, and the Blazers actually made it look like it wasn't quite as trash, and they lose to the Jazz 122 to 114, and that final score does not do this game justice at all. The Blazers, Eric, were favored. They were favored for the first time of the year going into this game. 6-16, they're favored at home. Getting players back. DeAndre Ayton is back. Malcolm Brogdon is back. So they get to play with Anthony Simons and Scoot Henderson. Shane Sharp were coming off good games last game. Coming home against a Jazz team missing Lauri Markkanen, Jordan Clarkson, Keontae George was out of this game. The Blazers were actually healthier than the other team going up against the Jazz at home, and they ended up trailing at one point in this game by 32 points. They were getting booed in Moda Center in a way I don't know if I've ever heard, at least no time recently. Boos were raining down from the Moda Center rafters, and this game was freaking embarrassing, man. This was the most embarrassing game of the year. People earlier today were like, man, I miss when Eric Brandt would rant. And, they wanted rants. They were asking for rants earlier today on our second channel stream. We picked this game. Everybody picked the Blazers. Everybody was wrong. But there was a lot of chat saying, man, we miss when you guys used to rant. Well, chat, you got what you asked for. Because, oh my goodness, this game was the definition of a dumpster fire. Eric, how's it going?
Oh, just great, man. A team coming off a back-to-back, so they played last night.
Mm-hmm.
You got 2 games. You didn't play since Monday, so you had 2 full days off to rest. Like you said, you got a couple guys back that hadn't played in a while, so they should be fresh. They're missing probably their 3 best players in Clarkson, Markkanen, and Keontae George, and also John Collins is out.
Mm-hmm.
This is one of those games, Tori. I've been talking about it since we started Blazers Uprise, so this isn't just a Chauncey thing. It's also happened a lot under Stotts, and it's one of those things where you like to say it's different personnel, so it's not the players necessarily. But there's just these games where the Blazers, you can just tell they went into that gym thinking they could just show up and win this game, and they didn't have to really try. And for a 6-16 team to think that is just absolutely disgustingly pathetic, dude. That's just so sad. And they played like complete garbage. Like they just could just stand there and not do anything. The coaching was terrible, all that kind of stuff. They did not even try in this game, and I mean, they're not good enough to do any of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, this was, like, the effort from players in this game was absolutely embarrassing. That hasn't been a problem this year, for the most part. But today, oh my god. The other embarrassing thing is the coaching, dude. Because to not have your team mentally prepared to come into a game like this, I mean, it's after 2 days off, like, they just weren't mentally prepared. They didn't come into this game with the right mindset, and that's a Chauncey thing. And under Chauncey, there's been a lot of games like this, but this Chauncey Billups-led teams are not headstrong. They're not headstrong. They go into games like this and think they can win, and then they get embarrassed on their home floor and booed, and they, like, just are stone-faced, like, whatever. When we get a big lead, we blow it. Okay? Like, mentally, at a timeout, if we go on a run and then the opposing team calls a timeout, they immediately go on another run. Like, I'm just tired of watching this team and feeling like they are not mentally strong. Because that's what I've felt like with different players, too, in previous years and this year. Like, this team just isn't mentally strong. Some players, I don't think are the problem. It's just, you can't come into a game like this expecting to win. That's just silly. 6-16 at home, yeah, it's a joke, man. And that starts at the top. You can blame a bunch of different people for that. A bunch of different players, coach. It's kind of hard to gauge. But what's not hard to gauge is that they absolutely were not mentally ready to come in and compete today. Because they were non-competitive up until the final, 4 minutes of this game, where they took, a 23-point deficit and made it an 8-point loss. Right? So, look at the final score. It's not too bad, right? They were favored going into this game. The Jazz were more injured than we were. I mean, it's frustrating, dude. This game was a joke.
Yeah, and you have someone like Colin Sexton who likes to, mix it up, right? He just comes in here, does whatever he wants. It just seemed like the team didn't even care. There's okay, cool, keep going off. We'll let you. Him and Taylor Horton Tucker just freaking came in and, bent us over in our own arena, and we just let them, we're just here, we'll take it. It just doesn't make any sense to me how they could show this little effort on a team that's supposed to be scrappy and full of energy and stuff.
Yeah, there's a comment in chat that I'd love to respond to because it's a good comment to respond to. Blazer Metric says it's a bunch of kids, guys. Look at the other extremely young teams in the league. Pistons, garbage. Spurs, garbage. Hornets, garbage. Young teams do this, it happens. Here's the thing. All year it's been, wait till we get our veterans back. Wait till we get Jeremy Grant back. Wait till we get DeAndre Ayton back. Wait till we get Malcolm Brogdon back. Wait till we get Anthony Simons back. The only guy you were missing today from that group was Jeremy Grant. You got some veterans on this team. But that's entirely the point. We are that garbage. We are that garbage. But this year has been kind of a weird year where it's if maybe we're healthy, maybe we're actually not that bad of a team. Maybe we're actually a team that could start winning some games, and then we're competitive in a lot of our losses this season. The problem is late game execution. We don't meet the moment. That's part of the headstrong thing that I was talking about. But that's been a problem even when the team wasn't young. That was a problem last year. That was a problem the year before, where we just lose close games. Even though you have who's regarded as one of the clutchest players in the league in previous seasons, we still lost way too many close games and blew way too many double-digit leads because we take our foot off the pedal. And that goes directly to mindset. That goes directly to coaching. But there's no excuse for coming out in a game like this. You can say, yeah, this happens to young teams. Guess what? Kids get in trouble too. If you're a parent, your kid at some point is going to get into trouble because that's what kids do. That doesn't excuse it. That does not excuse it. That doesn't mean you don't call it out. That doesn't mean you say, oh, he's a kid. He's gonna get in trouble. Oh, well, it happens. That's not how you respond to something like this. This was an inexcusable performance, and this was embarrassing. And the fact that they took no pride, it felt like, when they were getting dog-walked at home and booed off the court. You control how you respond to adversity. I understand that maybe you're going to have a mental lapse coming into a game like this and take the opponent lightly, but once they start pouring points in off the board, you got to respond with some effort. That's
30
the number
in the first quarter. Yeah, you should respond to that. Yeah.
That's the number one thing you can control. Okay, I understand overlooking a team like this, they're favored for the first time in the year, but you control how you respond to adversity. They get 38 points poured on them to start the game. They didn't respond to adversity all game. They just acted like a dog that tucked their tail between its legs, got into the fetal position, and sat there whimpering. Is how this team responded. Until it was already over and they put in Micah Potter, Harry Potter's cousin, and it was garbage time at the end, and then we go on a run to make it look more respectable. Duop Reith hits a couple threes. Chris Murray hits a 3. Yay, cool. We lost by 8, but dude, you got to respond with effort. If they responded to getting down 10, 15, 20 points with playing hard but making a bunch of mistakes, that's one thing. That's one thing, and that's understandable. That's what young teams do. Young teams give effort. We've heard it all season. Oh, this team gives great effort. They got a bunch of young guys that play hard. Okay, cool.
At least they play hard.
I've been hearing that all season. At least they played hard. Okay, fine. At least we got that. At least we haven't had to complain about effort all year long. Okay? But effort is 100% controllable, and when you get down in a game like this 10, 15, 20 points, it's sad to me, in my opinion, to not respond with a heightened level of effort or urgency or anything. And a lot of that has to do with Chauncey. Because if you have the ear of your team 100%, you should be able to get them to respond. But that also goes on the players. Have some freaking pride. We didn't play with pride in this game, man. And this is just basic stuff. We're not even talking about basketball. We're just talking about having a certain level of competitive pride where you're starting to get dog walked at home by the Utah Jazz, who are missing a bunch of key players. And that's not lighting a fire under you? That's sad. That's embarrassing. They got booed off their home floor. Like, there's not an excuse for that. That's bad.
Well, I'd like to ask, other than Kelly Olynyk, who are the Jazz veterans that, like, they're playing all rookies and young players too, and players that have less experience than Brogdon and Ayton and Anthony and stuff like that have been in the league less years than those guys. So it doesn't, if you're playing a veteran team, like the Clippers on Monday, right? That's one thing, but you can't say that in a game when you're playing a team that we're more talented than and have more experienced players than.
Yeah, 100%. Like, big picture, nothing changes. Okay, and I'll get into a lot of that. Big picture, nothing changes from this game because I'll explain it later, man. Just this particular game pissed me off. Like, play hard, have some pride, man. Like, it's just sad. The other thing that pissed me off from Chauncey is, like, how do you let a team box and won you all game and you don't figure out a way to start exploiting it? That's a gimmicky high school defense by a team that's young, that doesn't have a bunch of elite lengthy defenders or anything. They're freaking playing Simone Fontecchio heavy minutes. And they're running a box and one. You got 4 guards, and you can't figure out a way to start exploiting that the entire game? That is also freaking embarrassing for Chauncey, man.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Like, I don't even know if it was a box and one, because I know Lamar kept saying it was, but we just had the person they were boxing and wanting dribble the ball up the court every time. So it could have just been a normal zone that the top guy picked up Anthony every time, basically. Because, like, I don't know. We just.
Eric, that would make it even worse, though, because you should have. I know. You're not
watching the game. You couldn't even tell if that was it or not.
Yeah, because you have zone sets, right?
Yeah, Herc kept saying it's a box and one. I'm like, well, they've done nothing to show it's a box and one. It's not like they ran Anthony off a bunch of screens and the other 4 guys stayed in their area and the other guy tried to run through the screens. So I don't even know what defense they were running, because we didn't even try to exploit it or whatever. And we just, I don't know. If they were running a box and one, you have to play. You have to go to players and have screens and movement off ball and get going downhill, attacking, the mismatches, or you should have the floor spaced out to where you can attack the other 4 players. And we, like you said, we didn't really try to do that at all this game.
I don't trust Chauncey offensively. Mm-hmm. I also don't trust him defensively. But we'll get into that. Like, he needs to prove himself as a coach. He needs to improve as a coach. Can we say he's improved since we bring him in? It's like, he has no head coaching experience, so how can you expect him to win? Okay, well, he's going on year number 3. Can we say he's improved as a coach? The only thing you can really point to is be like, his players are playing harder? Really? That's the gauge? Like, okay, Chauncey's improving as a coach because he has new players that are young, trying to make a name for themselves in the league, and they're playing harder? If that's all you can really point to for him improving, then he probably really hasn't actually improved. Mm-hmm. And the problem with Chauncey is I don't trust him to make adjustments. We haven't gotten to see him in a playoff series, but the playoffs, when you play the same team up to 7 times in a row in a playoff series, it becomes a game of adjustments. And I've never trusted his ability to make an in-game adjustment. And the fact that there's a game like this where the entire game, it's hard to figure out, like, it looked like a box and one, but I also agree with your point, like, maybe it wasn't, we didn't really do anything. But that's entirely the problem. We did not adjust to how they were defending us all game and it wasn't man defense. If they're playing like aggressive at the point of attack and have good lengthy defenders and are playing like basic man defense and they're kind of shutting down our sets, it's harder to adjust to that than if a team in the NBA is playing a zone, whether it's a 2-3 or a box and one. If it's a 2-3, they have sets or should have sets to exploit a 2-3 zone already. If it's a box and one, maybe you haven't put in stuff for a box and one because like nobody does it. But at some point in the middle of the game, you got to coach your team and get them to adjust against the box and one. Like you gotta do something. So just not being able to adjust against that is scary, man. Like I don't trust him offensively. This is a year for him to prove himself as a coach. Defensively, they're still a bottom 10 defense. They're a bottom 10 defense going into this game. And everybody says, oh, they have a good defense. Your collaborator on air said, oh, they had a very good defense this year up until tonight. They ranked 21st in adjusted defensive rating. And guess what?
Well,
go ahead. Sorry, I've been talking for a while, but feel free to respond to any of that. But I do want to get into the defense.
So there are some people that maybe haven't heard this before. But yeah, so the people who are pushing agendas say the Blazers, look at their defensive rating. Look how good it is this year. They are an above average defense if you just look at regular defensive rating. And what you're talking about and have been talking about all season is that number has been fraudulent, and that if you look at you look at box and threes or whatever.
Dunks and threes.
Yeah. So they have an adjusted defensive rating, and in a minute you can explain what that means. But
yeah, I'll explain right now. Basically, it's defensive rating, but it's adjusted for strength of schedule. Because if you play the worst offenses in the league over and over again, your defensive rating is going to be higher because you're playing bad offenses. So it adjusts for who you play. So it's a better metric to gauge overall defense than just defensive rating.
Yeah, and I mean, not one thing is like the catch-all for any of these things. But when you looked at the adjusted defensive numbers, and when you've played a limited amount of games, 22, it's a quarter of the season, but there's, the schedule, you could have played, a bunch of really good teams, and you could have played, we haven't played Denver yet, right? Have we played Boston yet? We
haven't played Minnesota, who's the best team in the West right now.
We still have to play both of those teams 4 times.
Yep. We played OKC only once, and we play them 3 more times.
Yeah, so there's a lot of teams that we haven't played that are up near the top offensively. And so yeah, that'll when we play those teams, it'll shift a little bit. But yeah, so you've been saying that the defensive stuff was fake and that it would come back down to earth if it didn't improve, and it's starting to show that, I think, especially against a team like Utah tonight, who didn't or shouldn't have had a way to just completely get whatever shot they wanted because most of their good playmakers were not playing in this game. So that makes it even worse, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, and the thing is like going into this game 21st in adjusted defensive rating, but they're 21st mainly because they're playing hard. It's impossible to maintain a good defense only because you're playing hard. Like, we force one of the highest rates of turnovers in the league. I'll actually check it right now. Yeah, we're still number 1 in forced turnover rate. Opponent turnover percentage. We're still number 1, okay? And what was I saying? When we don't force turnovers, I was saying this a couple postgame shows ago. When we don't force turnovers, we are a really bad defense. Really bad. And then last game, how many turnovers do the Clippers have? At like 9, and they score 132 points. Tonight, going against a Jazz team with like a patchwork lineup, missing a bunch of key players, we only force 11 turnovers, and they score 122 points. The turnovers we force, a lot of times, are just by playing hard. Legitimately, the only reason we are not like a bottom 5 defense in the league is because players play hard. It's not anything that Chauncey's specifically doing other than maybe trying to instill an identity of like, we're going to press, we're going to get into the ball, we're going to get physical. The problem is, against good teams that actually know how to take care of the ball, you end up in foul trouble, you're going to defend worse in the second half, and you're not going to force those turnovers, and they're going to pick you apart. They're going to pick you apart. That's what happens whenever we don't force turnovers. I would love to see our adjusted defensive rating for possessions where turnovers aren't forced. Like, just if you could take turnovers out of the equation, because it's really, really bad. Now, forcing turnovers obviously matters, but you can't build your entire defense off of only forcing turnovers and only effort. That's literally it. Like, I don't think Chauncey deserves a ton of credit for that. But also, Eric, we're at that point of the season where Chauncey's defense starts to fall off. You remember the first year he was here? We were, I think, 11-11. That was the Norm Rocco year. That was the year we were like 10-1 at home to start the year and 1-10 on the road. Where like at home, we played really hard on defense and had the offense to like start 10-1. But on the road, we didn't have that same level of boost, didn't have that home crowd, and we were awful. Remember? And then after we were like 11-11, now Dame was struggling. That was definitely a factor there. But we fell off a cliff. The defense got even worse. And that's saying something because the defense was pretty bad. It fell off a cliff. What happened this time last year? This is around the same time of year last year where the defense also fell off a cliff. This feels like the third year in a row where in December, the defense, which isn't good in the first place, falls off a cliff. Where it goes from like not even good to really, really bad.
Yeah, and I mean, I said this last year. They had they played a lot of zone defense at the beginning of the season and didn't really change it up much. I feel like they got some new personnel this year. They played some really good defense, it seemed, but a lot of that is now like, was it just effort and teams didn't know how to attack it at first, and now that there's 20 plus games of film, are they getting easily picked apart? And we know that the adjustments to it aren't really happening that much. So I think that's what's happening is once you get into this part of the season, teams have film and they can figure out how to attack your defense, and we don't change it at all.
Yeah, Kenny D has a comment in chat. He says it's because teams watch tape, make adjustments, and then figure us out, and Chauncey can't make adjustments. I can't argue with that. Can't argue with that at all. Everything comes back to an inability for Chauncey to adjust. You got to be able to adjust in this league. That is maybe the number one thing that coaches have to be able to do in this league. That was my problem with Stotts for a while, was he struggled to adjust. That's why we were running drop scheme on Steph Curry in Game 1 of the Western Conference Finals. No, he finally adjusted after that, props, after he got roasted by the national media for how he was guarding Steph Curry on the pick and roll, right? Chauncey's kind of the same way. He mixes things up defensively, but a lot of times it's like, it doesn't really feel planned for a specific reason. Mm-hmm. It's just like, we're going to switch things up. We're going to run zone. The other team can be shooting hot, and it's like, okay, we're going to start running zone, which gives us even more threes. So he switches things up defensively more than like Terry Stotts did, but it never seems planned. It never seems for a specific reason. He doesn't seem to know how to meet the moment in terms of making the right call depending on what's going on in the game. And that's a big problem. That's a big, big problem.
Yeah, and Jermaine earlier said that what's Chauncey supposed to do? It's he's not the one that builds the roster. He does not get that excuse anymore. He sat here and told us for the second straight year that he had his guys and he had a team that he liked and wanted and could coach and could do that kind of stuff. So let's not do that. Like Chauncey specifically has said it, that he has the type of players he needs to do things that he wants to do on the court.
Enough freaking excuses, bro. Like that was entirely the message at Media Day was Chauncey has his guys. Yeah. There is always an excuse that you can find for why things in this organization are utter crap and we're going to be tanking for the third straight year and maybe the fourth straight year. We're 6-17. There shouldn't be the expectation that we're not tanking again next year. without major changes. There's always an excuse. There's an excuse for how everything went down in the Dame saga. There's an excuse. You can always find a way to excuse what the organization or the head coach or the GM or anyone in this organization is doing. You can even find ways to excuse Jody Allen. You can always find an excuse if you try hard enough. The problem is, when you want to find an excuse, then you're going to find one. But is that really what's going on? Is that really what's logical? Or at some point, you have to step up and say, this ain't good enough. No more excuses. But that's kind of the problem, is there's always this acceptance of mediocrity around this franchise. I've talked about it on the stream for years. So the goal is to rebuild to get better, right? But a game like this is inexcusable. And Chauncey, you can't sit here and say, oh, well, it's the young guys, when you haven't proven yourself that you can make the right adjustments with veteran lineups in the past. He doesn't have that leeway. If he, in the past 2 years, showed the ability to make proper adjustments in the middle of a game with veteran lineups, and now he has a bunch of young guys, then you could make the excuse that maybe it's, the young guys aren't picking it up, or maybe they're not handling adjustments well in game, maybe it's the players. But when you never, as an NBA coach, have proved to be able to make proper in-game adjustments, you don't get the leeway of blaming it on the players.
And so I see people saying in chat, well, what did you expect? We weren't going to be good this year. Do you think we should have a better record than we have? All this kind of stuff.
I expect an improvement, and we're not improving. We're getting worse.
Yeah. The problem is when you're watching a coach that doesn't seem to really know what he's doing in terms of game management and adjustments and stuff like that, as this team starts to hopefully take steps each year, you can't have a coach that doesn't make adjustments and stuff. And then I see also the people asking about, well, is he good at developing players maybe, and then you get a new coach once you're ready to contend. Yeah, maybe that's the case. But it's also you have to give some credit to Chauncey for Sharp and Ant's development, but at the same time, if those guys have a good work ethic and are working hard on weaknesses and things like that, they can get better just naturally or organically as well. It might not matter who the coach is. I saw a lot of people try to say that Stotts was the reason Dame was good, Dame's the reason Dame was good, right? And Sharp might be the reason Sharp is good, and Ant might be the reason Ant's good. And if Scoot's good, it might be because Scoot is good. It doesn't necessarily mean that the coach is good. The coach is more responsible for the team concepts and the schemes and stuff like that. And when you watch a team like the Jazz tonight, and the Jazz haven't been great this year, but they don't have a star player, or they don't have their building block yet. They have blocks, but they don't have their main piece yet. They're still hoping to get that down the road. And so you watch a coach like that, or the best example I have is Mark Daigneault on the Oklahoma City Thunder. He had the Thunder, even when they were terrible, they were near top 10, 10th in defense and stuff. And they not only played hard on defense, but had good team concepts. And that was with no rim protection, no bigs, Lou Dort being their only really good perimeter defender, right? And this guy schemed up pretty good defensive concepts to get a young team to play good defense. And now that they are maturing, they know all these concepts, can do different things on defense, can adjust on the fly because they've practiced and implemented different game plans throughout several years of coaching. And Yeah, like there's plays where, like tonight, Scoot didn't get back on transition because he was looking at the coach to see what kind of defense he wanted him to run, and that's not necessarily on Chauncey, but at some point you have to entrust in your players to not have to look in the sideline every time they run down the court or back down the court on defense. They shouldn't have to do that much. They should be more comfortable within what's going on. And I've already seen this excuse in chat too, that Chauncey's system is just really complex and the young guys are having trouble figuring it out.
What's complex about it? If you're going to say a system is complex, you got to be prepared to say why it is complex or what is complex about it. Otherwise, you're just repeating talking points that have no substance behind them.
And the problem with that is it's just, it seems like an excuse. Yeah.
What's complex about it? Does anyone ever want to explain any of the complexities of his offense at all? Please.
And it's been now 3 seasons of Chauncey saying that the young guys have trouble picking up the complexities of his schemes. Okay, then your schemes are shit, dude. Like they're crap, right? If you constantly every single year are saying that your schemes are too complex and the people are having trouble learning it, you either aren't teaching them well enough or you suck as a coach. Like, that's just pure and simple. So the next person that uses the excuse, I'm sorry, but you're just allowing Chauncey to be bad then because he just comes up with like this, like, because that's the problem, Tori. No one's going to question him on it, right?
Yeah.
They're just like, oh, okay, that makes sense. Like, they must not be doing something in practice, right? Or whatever. Like, no one ever asked, like, well, what is the complexity of the offense that they're not grasping? They never follow up with that, or they never say, hey, it seems like a lot of times you say the reason why something happens is because they aren't getting it or they're not far enough along with how complex they have to learn, the system they have to learn is. And like no one ever says, hey, is it maybe the problem is it's too complex then? Like if that's really the case, like it's one or the other. Like either it's too complex or you're just using that as an excuse because you know you're not going to get questioned on it. In either way, to me, that's a sign of a bad coach if you're constantly having to use that excuse.
Yeah. Yep. Shout out to Giannis Bondar, $5 donation, says, I had a $150 view of this absolute masterclass by Shea and Simons. Unacceptable for both of them to have performances like this on the same night. Yeah, I mean, Sharp just didn't show up. Might as well have thrown me out there because Shaden just effort, defense wasn't there offensively. Like, I don't know what was up with him tonight, Eric, but
yeah, like Andrew says, I think he is just due for a bad game.
Could this be? Hold on, let me go look at his game log, Eric, because maybe we're having some deja vu. Let's see here. The 4 games he played before this, 3 of them he played at least 41 minutes. We lost all of those. Okay? If you want to look at the last 5 games ago, he played 39 minutes. Okay? So, the last 4 games going into tonight, let me pull out the trusty calculator here. He was averaging basically 40 minutes a game the last 4 games going into tonight. And I know they've had some days off, but he had a hot stretch earlier this year at the start of November where he played 6 games in a row where he played 40 minutes or more. And he was playing pretty well. And then after that stretch, sorry for the ESPN ad, November 15th against Cleveland, plays 27 minutes, is 2 for 12. We got beat at home by 14. 2 for 12, 27 minutes. You look at his last 4 games, averaging 40 a game. Basically, his last 5 games, averaging 40 a game. He's played great. Now, at home, 27 minutes, 1 for 12. That's almost the same exact... That's the same exact minutes and almost the same exact shooting. This kind of feels like deja vu. He should not be playing 39 to 40 minutes a game when we're losing every game.
Well, also, so Chauncey pretty much benched everyone, but he kept Scoot and Sharp in there. And I understand Scoot, but why was Sharp in there playing with like Chris Murray and Reith and all that stuff too? Like to your point, why don't you just rest him when you rest everyone else?
Yeah. That's the other problem with Chauncey is he doesn't know how to manage minutes. He has no clue how to manage minutes. It's been a problem his entire tenure here where he runs players into the ground. And Sharp has been playing too many minutes lately, and I brought it up a couple times. Like, he's playing a lot of minutes. This is just like his hot stretch earlier. I wouldn't be surprised if he has a stretch where he looks really, really bad after this. You know, I'm paraphrasing, but that's basically kind of been my worry. When I see him go on stretches where back-to-back games he's playing over 40 minutes in a game, it's like, how is this wearing on his body? Because we've seen him have a 6-game stretch where he's averaging like 42 minutes a game, and then have a stretch where he plays awful, doesn't play as much, and then bounce back. And then, since he's playing good again, he's playing 40 minutes a game again. And now today has a bad game. So I wouldn't be surprised if the next couple of games, like, he looks rough. And if that's the case, you're probably establishing a pattern that he'll go on these hot streaks and Chauncey will play him 40 minutes a game for 4, 5, 6 games, and that's going to wear him out, and then he's going to struggle. Because if it happens twice before the end of the year even, then yeah.
All right, so I guess people like Andrew in chat have never heard of hitting a wall. Come on, guys. He
might be being sarcastic. That might be a sarcastic comment.
No, I know, but other people are making the comment too. Yeah, like, it doesn't matter how young or old you are. You can... I know, Andrew, I'm just making fun of you. You can hit a wall. You can get tired legs, especially going up against the best athletes in the world. But yeah.
Well, crap, y'all just compared him to Kobe. No excuse, he's young enough for his minutes. Guess what? When Kobe was his age, they played a lot more in the half court. The game was slower paced. It wasn't as much running. Now, the game is a lot faster paced. It's a lot more running. It wears you down. There's a reason why coaches normally try to keep players' minutes at 36 minutes a game at most. So, yeah, like, at some point you have diminishing returns in a game, right? Like, if he's gassed at the end of games, he's not going to play so well, and he's, like, disappeared at ends of games. And I think part of that is Chauncey needs to run some more stuff for him, but I think part of that is he's gassed at the end of games. We've been talking about that as well, right? I think it's very clear that he should not be playing more than 36, maybe 37 minutes a game at most. I think it's clear cut and dry. I think it's becoming obvious at this point, especially if he continues to struggle after this. If not, fine. If not, maybe we're lucky that, you know, they've had a couple stretches with multiple days off during this stretch where he's playing a lot of games or playing a lot of minutes. But I'm really curious to see what he looks like next game and the game after, because if he struggles, I mean, you're establishing a pattern at that point.
And for those that say he should be rested because he took a whole year off or whatever, okay, so he played in high school. You know, high school games are 8-minute quarters. Yeah. So even if you play the whole game, that's 32, and it's high school, so it's not comparable to NBA. Doesn't play at all in college, takes a year off. Most of last year, he's playing 15, 20 minutes a game at the most. Mm-hmm. And then there was a stretch where he didn't play as much in the middle of the season, and then started to play more. And then obviously at the last 10 games or so, he probably was way up in the high 30s, right? So but that was like a 10-game stretch at the end of the season and had all off season. But like, it does take a toll on your body, no matter how physically gifted you are or whatever, when you don't have any kind of experience or length of time playing, even 30 plus minutes in the NBA for a full season. He hasn't even done that yet. So maybe kind of like build it up to that point instead of just throwing him into the fire right away. But it absolutely is hard to go from playing 15 to 20 minutes to 40 minutes a game, or in some cases not playing at all to 40 minutes.
Yep. So the thing is, guys, I've started this season to talk more about patterns because I think you can identify things better if they happen more than once, right? Like, Sharp has a stretch where he struggles after playing 42 minutes a game for 5 games. You could say maybe that's just a coincidence. Maybe he wasn't actually tired. Maybe it was just, a bad stretch of games, which is going to happen to everybody. Okay, but if that same stretch plays out for a second time, then it's like, okay, that's twice where he's had a stretch where he's played 4 or 5 games, 40 to 42 minutes a game, and then had a stretch where he struggled after that. If it happens a third time, that's more and more evidence that, like, this is actually a legitimate thing. Okay? I don't know how his body feels. He might have just mentally been checked out. I don't know. Like, it could be a number of different things, but that's why I'm curious to see how he responds to this, and it makes logical sense. It's not like there's a pattern, but the conclusion we're coming to makes no logical sense. It makes perfect sense that after playing heavy minutes like that for 4, 5, 6 games in a row, he would get fatigued. Like, that's kind of common knowledge type stuff. So there's a reason why players don't play 41 minutes a game on a season. When was the last time you ever saw that? So it's all about pattern recognition, that sort of thing. Like, you cannot. Some things might be coincidences, but if they keep happening over and over and over again, it's less likely for them to be coincidences.
Yeah.
I don't care about what Michael Jordan did in the freaking 80s when the game was much, much slower, bro. Like, we're not in 1985. I wasn't alive.
Jordan played in college. He played heavy minutes in college. He played heavy minutes in the NBA for several years. Like, he had his legs adjusted to that. And I think there is an adjustment period.
Yeah. Can also be mentally fatiguing for players that maybe aren't quite MJ mentally, right? Shout out to Giannis Bondar, $5 donations. He says, I was sitting pretty close to the court today. Shea genuinely looked out of it today. Just no emotion, even less emotion. I know Shea doesn't show emotion. Yeah, I mean, he absolutely. You could tell on the TV, too. Thank you, Giannis, for your insight after going to the game. At least your $150 ticket brought something of value. Appreciate your donations, man. But he was absolutely out of it, Maybe he's mentally fatigued. I don't know. Like, there could be a bunch of different reasons. So I'm not saying definitively it's one thing or another. It's just, it might be a pattern that's being established right now.
Well, also, I mean, this is another reason why we wanted to trade Brogdon, but I don't think it's a coincidence that Brogdon comes back and we have the 4 guards. We play 3 of them together sometimes, and all of a sudden our defense is a lot worse, and players have trouble getting in rhythm because there's all these guards that are trying to get shots, and they don't get consistent plays called for them when they're just like taking turns scoring and stuff like that. So I don't know. I think it's pretty clear that this team is better with the 3-guard lineup of Scoot, Sharp, and Anthony, and that they need to move on from Brogdon sometime in the next 2 months.
Yep, absolutely. I want to talk about a couple long-term things, but before I get into that, do you have anything else?
Well,
that you want
yeah, just kind of Sharp is part of this, so I just want to say something about the defense in this game. Sharp actually, so we talked about this last year where he would get up, press up, move his feet really well, play really good defense, and then the player he was guarding would go to take a shot, and he'd just like stop and let the guy go by him, or give up on the play and didn't finish it defensively. And he had been much better about that this year, staying strong and staying in front of the guy all the way through the shot, contesting shots better, all that kind of stuff. But tonight it seemed more like last year, where he was moving his feet really well, and the guy would drive on him, and then he would just stop, and the guy would go by him and get a lay-in. And it's like, well, why did you stop? Or why did you put your hands down? And that happened several times tonight. And then Ayton was just, he was a non-factor, completely invisible, protecting the rim and on defense today. And then first play of the game, Tamani, who's been pretty much our best defender, he just stands on the perimeter while his guy cuts back door, and they get a basket out of it, which wasn't good. Outside of that, he wasn't terrible defensively. But Sharp and Ayton in particular, they were rough, man, in that starting lineup tonight. Are you muted?
Yes. I have some things to say about DeAndre Ayton. Like, he returns today. It kind of fits into the long-term stuff. I definitely have some thoughts on DeAndre Ayton. But before we get into it, this stream is brought to you by BetUS, which is our sportsbook sponsor all season long. I'm debuting on a show produced by them tomorrow around 12 p.m. I will tweet out the link and post it in our Discord. You guys can come check it out. It's an all-sports show with an MLB creator that I've worked with. I'm the NBA guy, of course, so I'm looking forward to that. Going to be something different, so hopefully you guys check it out. Show some support for your boy. But BetUS, great sportsbook sponsor, reliable, secure, 24/7 customer support. They'll take care of you if you want to get in on any action for sports right now. This Blazers season isn't going too well, but you can still find ways to have fun with the team, with games, with the NBA, with different sports. They got NFL, college basketball, overseas basketball. If you want to scout a game and need something to make it a little bit more intriguing, you can place bets at BetUS. They got live betting parlays, picks against the spread, all sorts of fun stuff for you guys over there. And if you use the link at the top of my description box below, you'll receive a 125% deposit match. So if you deposit $100, you'll get $125 free dollars on top of that. If you deposit more, you'll get even more. So it's a huge win, great deal. So if you want to get in on any sporting action, check out BetUS. Shout out to them for sponsoring this stream. Now, I wish I had some dramatic music to segue us into dun 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 talking about DeAndre Ayton, because he's pretty rough today. Call this a gut feeling, if you will. I don't feel like this DeAndre Ayton thing is going to end too well. People have been fine with him this year, and I don't really understand why. I am curious to see how he responds to being on a losing team. I've been thinking about this. So he was on a winning situation, a team that was contending with guards who would feed him, right? On a max contract in Phoenix, and still wasn't happy. Now he's in Portland, 6-17. He's getting utilized even less. What would Ayton be happier about being here compared to Phoenix? There's a lot that he would be even more unhappy about. The team sucks. They're losing a bunch of games. He's scoring less points per game. He has to deal with drives at him constantly. The Blazers give up one of the highest rates of shots at the rim in the league. They also give up a really bad percentage there, so it's not like his rim protection is having much of an impact in terms of players finishing around the rim. And he comes back and just kind of looked very checked out today. I don't understand bringing him in without utilizing him offensively, I'm starting to wonder how much of this was maybe a Joe Cronin decision compared to a Chauncey Billups decision, because it doesn't seem like Chauncey Billups was excited to use DeAndre Ayton. Like, and especially when they're playing a zone or a box and one, which the weakness of a zone is in the middle of the key. Where does DeAndre Ayton love to play? Like, middle of the key to free throw line. Like, right in the soft spot of a zone. But we don't even really utilize him a whole lot. I mean, he had 13 shots, no assists. Offensively was okay in this game. I thought we should have spammed him against the zone. I thought we should have really utilized him. I'm just kind of baffled overall still. I know it's his first game back. This goes into like before his injury. I'm still baffled at willingly bringing in a player on a max contract and then not utilizing him like a max contract player. Like, why did you want to bring this guy in when he's making that much if you were going to treat him like he was a role player, fifth starter, fourth starter who should be making $10 million a year? The problem is everything comes in the flow, and he played with two really good guards at setting him up. That's part of the reason why his points per game are down. But like defensively tonight, that was the one thing you could say maybe early in the season, like he's having an impact defensively, I guess, but defensively today, absolute non-factor. And I am legitimately starting to worry about where this situation goes. I don't think it's something where the Blazers have to move off him. I'm just still confused as to the calculus of bringing him in, and he is. I'm very convinced that he is not the long-term answer at the center spot right now, Eric. I'm very convinced. And that's where long-term, a game like this, like you got the guards, that's your future. You still got to bail out the front court. And it probably doesn't involve DeAndre Ayton. Maybe it involves Jeremy Grant, but it probably doesn't involve him either.
Sorry. I know exactly why Ayton is happier here at Portland than on Phoenix.
Yeah, why is that?
He doesn't have the pressure of winning or having to win. And that's what happened. He can say whatever he wants, but why were Booker and Monty Williams and Durant and like everyone he complained about hard on him? Because in the middle of a playoff game, he'd take possession off or not go for a rebound or whatever, Yeah. And he got called out for it. Mm-hmm. And he's such a baby, he doesn't like that, right? Yep. Here in Portland, no one calls him out. He can do whatever he wants, and it doesn't matter. It's never been about, I need to score 20 points and get 30 shots a game. It was always about he didn't want the pressure that came along with having to make sure he was a good player and did his job on a winning team. And I think now that he's on a team that isn't concerned about winning this year, it's perfect for him, man. He can just do whatever he wants. He's fine. And the team might start to get sick of that at some point, but for him personally, he's loving it because he's out there playing. He makes the same amount of money, and he doesn't have to face any of the criticism that he faced for years when they were trying to win a championship in Phoenix with him, and he was part of the problem at times instead of the solution. And he blamed everyone but himself for all his attitude problems, everything going on with him. It was always someone else. The coach doesn't like him. The star players are too hard on me. All that kind of stuff. And now that he's in a situation where there's no one here on the team, like we talked about it before the season, we don't really have that vet leader. I mean, we have Brogdon and Grant right now, but they're not the kind of guys who are going to get in his face and call him out or anything like that. So he can just completely coast on this team and get his few shots a game. He looks good because his field goal percentage is high. His rebounding numbers look decent because he's the only person who's big enough to get a rebound in our lineup at times. And it doesn't seem like it's his fault. Like no one's blaming him for Portland sucking because we traded Dame and all this kind of stuff, and we have a terrible coach and all this stuff, right? So it's just it's easy for him, man. He's loving it. That's why he's so happy right now, because he can just completely be himself and not have any of the pressure that comes along with being a winning player, because he's not one.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you guys feel like this is coming out of left field, coming out of nowhere, this criticism of DeAndre Ayton, just know that it's not. Read between the lines if you want to. That's all I'm going to say. But I'm out. I'm out on it.
To be fair, I would love to get $30 million and not have to do much either.
I mean, I'd love to play video games for $30 million a year.
The only thing better would be to be a college football coach to get fired and have like a $76 million buyout like Jimbo Fisher and get paid $76 million to go away and not even have to coach anymore.
Yeah, I've never liked his disposition. I've never liked it. There's always something that feels off with him. And he's not the type of guy you force feed. He's not that type of player. That's what I would always tell Suns fans. Is they would complain about, like, man, Monty needs to get more touches. Like, okay, what? You're going to give him to the ball at the free throw line? Well, play in the second half, he had the ball at the free throw line, didn't really know what to do, and, like, spun straight into a turnover. Because he wasn't seeing the rest of the floor. Like, he's not a three-point shooter. He worked all offseason on three-point shots, according to him, and has yet to take a single three.
That apparently was a joke, but yeah, I don't know.
What? Stupid. Okay, that's a dumb joke. Like, what? So what was he going to change here to make him worth that contract? Is my question. It just doesn't make sense. But he doesn't have the disposition to dominate. He'll say he's dominating, but he doesn't have the mindset to go out there and dominate. He doesn't handle adversity well. He doesn't handle accountability well. And he isn't aggressive. He doesn't handle contact well. He's not a three-point shooter, though. Like, if you're going to be a finesse big, at least shoot threes. He's not even that. Defensively, like, he's solid, but he's not a top 5 rim protector. Our rim defense really is no better this year than it was last year when we had Yusuf Nurkic. There is a reason why the Suns were willing to move off this guy. And I think this trade, I think at some point, Joe Cronin and or Chauncey Billups and this Blazers organization is going to realize it made a mistake. But the thing is, this trade is still fine because you got Tamani Kamara. That's the only thing saving this trade. Like, thank God we got Tamani Kamara. And Kamara was really good offensively today. Like, this was an impressive offensive game. 3 for 4 from 3, at least before I, stopped paying attention in garbage time. You got Tamani Kamara. Tamani Kamara is the better asset in this trade for the Blazers than DeAndre Ayton is at this point. Because you might have to trade an asset just to get rid of DeAndre Ayton's contract. You might have to actually attach something to him to give him up. So this is going to be fascinating to watch play out. That's all I'll say. There could be some stuff coming regarding him.
Yeah. Trying to read some chat. So people were asking why, Blazer fan was asking why Simons only got 8 field goal attempts tonight. That's because the Utah defense sold out to stop him, and we have no other plays other than let Simons try to score. And so he couldn't get the ball or couldn't do anything against their pressure. And we had no adjustment or counter to it. And then the reason why he only played 22 minutes, like someone else asked, in the middle of the third quarter when things were falling apart, we were down 30. Chauncey just benched all the starters outside of Sharp for 3 more minutes. And then, so none of those guys, Brogdon, Ayton, Simons, and Thibault all got benched. Kamara all got benched at a certain point in the second half.
Yep.
And it's probably the right decision in this game. You weren't coming back in 30 down with the effort you were given. It was over.
It might be the only thing. It might be the only thing he did right this game.
They might have should have just packed it in at halftime, because they did not even try in the second half outside of the last few minutes. When look at Uprise plus minus, by the way, for this game in a game we lost or almost lost by 30 at one point.
Plus 21 in 13 minutes.
Okay.
I would rather have him on a two-way contract than DeAndre Ayton on a max contract.
Dude, Tori.
Yeah.
This guy Chauncey Billups, though, he put in Moses Brown both halves as the first big off the bench.
Yeah.
What was Moses Brown's plus minus today?
-6 in 5 minutes. It's actually not terrible.
Not terrible, but yeah.
DeAndre Ayton, 21 minutes, -13. That was the best of the starting lineup, though. The rest of the starters were even worse. But why are you playing Moses Brown over Duop Reith? What has Moses Brown done? Like, Duop Reith is not a good defender. I saw somebody on Twitter try to make the argument he is. Like, he's not a good defender. He's, like, kind of mobile, but he's very undersized. Can't really rebound too well. But, like, you are just a mess offensively for the better part of the second and third quarters. Get your three-point shooting center out there. Like, what are you doing? He scored the ball well this year. He could score. Why are you getting your big, stiff Moses Brown out there? Like, it doesn't make sense why you would play Moses Brown over Duop Reith. Duop Reith, if we had 2 more minutes, Duop Reith might have helped us win this game miraculously.
All right, I gotta say something. Jimmy in chat says it took you guys 20 games to figure out that you could have said that before they traded for him. We actually both did.
We did for years, my God.
Yeah. Well, so I'm not letting anyone put that on us.
Yeah.
Those of you that watch us for a long time know we were both vehemently against trading for DeAndre Ayton. And I mean, he's been fine at times this year. He actually had some games where I was like, okay, we could have done some things. But we're not like some of the other Blazer media who tried to claim that he was like the best asset we could have gotten in a trade and
going to be a star and all sorts of stuff.
He was going to be a star in Chauncey's system and top 5 center, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
That we have never said that on this show. So we were both against trading for Jeremy Grant too. You can say that was right or wrong. Jeremy's been really good since he's been here.
The main reason was we didn't know if he wanted to be here, but the other main reason was like I didn't think he helped our defense like everybody was acting, and that part has been entirely true.
Yeah, and we also didn't want to. We knew we were going to have to pay him. We didn't think we'd have to pay him that much, 160 over 5 years. So that was even worse than we thought when we were discussing it. But he did have 1 year left on his contract, and we were both afraid of getting stuck in a position where you had to pay him or lose him for nothing. And yeah.
You know what the problem is, Eric? We don't figure out what players we want by watching highlights.
Yeah.
Because I feel like you watch Ayton highlights, he's going to look freaking good in a highlight tape. You watch Jeremy Grant highlights, he's going to look freaking good in a highlight tape. Of course, you're going to want those guys if you just watch highlights. I mean, we were against consensus regarding DeAndre Ayton, it felt like, for years before we actually traded for him. And oftentimes it was his disposition. He hasn't gotten better. People would say he's only 23, he's only 24. It's like, okay, well, he's not getting better, so why would anything change? 3 years, he hasn't gotten better.
His coach, Tori.
Why is he going to get better now? But see, I don't like trading for players where everything for them is an excuse. Mm-hmm. Because at the end of the day, a player controls his own self-accountability, his own effort, how he responds to adversity, and his work in the offseason. And if you're not getting any better, that says you're not putting in enough work in the offseason if you're 22, 23, because you should be getting better at that age. And then you got all the other on-court problems. I ain't blaming your coach for that. You can't blame your coach for that. You can't blame your situation for that. So, yeah, like we were against Ayton. I tried so hard to be positive regarding picking him up, and I understood taking the chance, but I said from the get-go, you got to actually try and maximize him as a player. You got to put him in situations that are uncomfortable for him, where he's forced to maybe create a little bit, or you're having him shoot 3 threes a game, just to see what sort of growth you can get out of him. Because if you're just trading for the player he was in Phoenix, he's not worth that contract. The problem is we brought him in and we didn't try and maximize him at all. We didn't try and get him to play at a higher level than he did in Phoenix at all. So from the jump, that defeated the purpose of ever even picking him up. But then, if anything, we've done less.
I mean, it's starting to look like the opposite of what people thought. Like, maybe Monty was maximizing him. He got 18 and 12 out of this guy on a team that had other much better scoring options. Like,
yeah.
So if anything, it might be that like Monty was maximizing him, not minimizing him like Ayton tried to claim or whatever, or that Cronin tried to claim.
He just doesn't really do anything. He's a okay starting center.
Yeah.
He's being paid a max freaking contract. He is one of the top 10 worst contracts in the league right now, in my opinion.
Yeah, at least there's only 2 more years after.
I have a feeling there's a chance that like next offseason they might actually be willing to attach an asset to get rid of his contract. Especially when you got Jody Allen as owner. And if this continues going the path it's going down, I think there's a legitimate chance that they would, because they with how he's played, you'd have to attach an asset to him to get rid of him.
Mm-hmm.
So if they want to move off from him, I mean, that's going to be funny where like they willingly wanted to bring in his contract and then attached an asset to it in the offseason. Like,
And Cronin won't get any heat for it. Other than from us.
Nope. Yeah. So.
Yeah, I hope that's wrong. I really hope that's wrong.
Yeah. I mean, someday I hope I can explain things a little bit more than I can right now, but yeah. Anyway.
I mean, you can go back and watch the stream where we traded Dame. Like, I've been saying this for years. I would not trade for or pay a center max money or anywhere close to max money unless they were one of the elite centers like an Embiid or Jokic or whatever. I've been very clear about that. like this entire time, a rebuilding team does not pay their center. Like it was bad enough, slightly overpaying for Nurkic at half of that contract, but yeah, like I don't think you need to pay centers like that. I think that's the kind of thing that kind of muddies your cap situation for a long time.
Yep. Gray says trade DA for some assets. You're not getting any assets for him, Gray. That's the problem. You would probably have to attach something to him to get rid of his contract. Well, I don't think any team out there is going to look at DeAndre Ayton and be like, I want that guy on that contract on our team.
What are your thoughts? Do you think they would? It seems to me like there are a couple teams that have an equally bad contract that could use a center or would be willing to take a chance on Ayton. Do you think the Blazers would even explore that kind of possibility this offseason?
What was the exact package?
He's 25, not 23.
Yeah. Sorry, I was responding to a comment. What was the exact package you said?
I didn't give an exact package. I was just saying, like, let's say there was some team that had, I'm not saying the Nets would trade for him because they have Claxton, but they could be worried about Claxton free agent this summer.
Why wouldn't they just pay Claxton a max?
Well, they have, let's just say they offered like Ben Simmons for him or something. Do you think the Blazers would do that?
I would rather.
Or do you think they would?
Honestly, how many years are left on Ben Simmons' contract?
I think one more after this one. It's one less than Ayton's, I think.
I think it'd definitely be possible.
But do you think the Blazers would entertain that if they had a chance to get out of his contract without giving up an asset?
I think they would consider it.
Like right now? I'm just wondering, like, if you think it's
I
bad
think
enough
right
to
now
where.
it's too early for optics.
Okay,
I feel like they
so
gotta
we're
let it
back to
play
that.
out.
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
feel like they gotta let it play out a little bit more for optics. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
I
Oh,
don't think they'd be against that, but
that's that's a good one, Senior Mola. So it came out today that the Jazz are frustrated with John Collins and feel like he's underperformed for them. Let's say they gave us John Collins and I don't know, an expiring contract or something.
yeah, I mean it's hard because it's not really all a. If this, it's just different when it becomes about more than just like player value on the court. You know,
Hmm.
it's tough to say what teams would and wouldn't do when it becomes about off court stuff.
Yeah,
So I don't know. I don't know. I can't honestly like accurately answer that question because I don't know quite exactly where they're at. I'd just be speculating, but yeah. Good questions.
yeah.
Good questions.
And
But I mean, but you're a rebuilding team. Like you should want to get off his contract. He is not worth a max contract. If you can get rid of his contract for something cheaper, diversify your assets where you maybe get back a couple smaller contracts that you can then use in other trades that aren't looked at as a negative for DeAndre Ayton, like you liquefy and they're building from the ground up. You don't want an anchor for a non-star center weighing down your rebuild. You want to be able to absorb salary and get picks. You don't want to be on the opposite side when you're rebuilding because they're trying to accumulate assets. They need to add a star front court player in the future. They either do that through the draft or they trade for one. If they're going to end up trading for one, they need as many first-round picks and assets as possible. If you're giving up an asset to get off DeAndre Ayton, compared to if you had cap space instead and could get an asset, that's a difference of maybe 2 first-round picks. Who knows? Right? So then when it comes time to trade for a star, you're sitting in maybe the same position they were sitting in with Dame, where it's like, man, we don't have enough to trade for that star forward. That's the entire thing this rebuild I want to avoid is making the same mistake we did with Dame where like we just don't have enough assets and can't put the right pieces around him. Right? We got more backcourt pieces. We're in a better spot now than we ever were with Dame to do that around this backcourt. And we got 3 guys maybe instead of 1, right? 1.5, count CJ, whatever. So it just comes down to you got to accumulate assets. They're 6-17. They shouldn't be worried about like trying to start off this season hot and trying to like make a play-in spot. They should be worried about trying to put themselves in a position to contend 3 years down the line because they are nowhere close to being ready to make noise. Nowhere close. Make noise as in be taken seriously as a team that can win multiple playoff series. So they're not close to that. It's going to be a process. And they willingly walked into this process, so they should have known what they signed up for. So they, like, we've always talked about direction. Don't be directionless. You got to embrace a plan. You got to embrace a direction. You got to have a plan. The direction is rebuild. The direction is not, we're going to bring in DeAndre Ayton on a max contract and then hope everything magically goes right. And if it doesn't, we're stuck with him. And then we don't have the flexibility to try and accumulate assets over the next 2 years because we got this max contract for no reason.
Mm-hmm. Trying to think of a team that would.
It's tough.
Yeah.
I've started thinking about it. It's tough.
The Bulls want win now players. Maybe they think Ayton.
Yeah, Ayton and Vucevic at the 4 and the 5. Oh, man. At least you say, hey, you guys are like kind of rebuilding, but you want to win, so he fits both directions. Which is just kind of a load of crap, but maybe.
Man, I was like secretly hoping for this trade. I knew this would never happen, but like just for fun, once we got Ayton, I was thinking of teams that we could like fleece for retrading him or flipping him.
Mm-hmm.
And I was thinking about taking advantage of the Hornets being stupid and getting like Mark Williams and Gordon Hayward for Ayton because Hayward's on an expiring.
Yeah.
Like if we could do something like that, that'd be awesome. That'd be a home run. Yeah.
If we attached, it depends on the first because all our firsts are pretty quality. Like, but if we attach an asset to Ayton but got back a guy like Mark Williams with an expiring, then it doesn't quite look as bad. You're basically trading that asset for Mark Williams and getting Ayton out here. So maybe it's not a loss at the end of the day. The other team that I could maybe see being interested is Orlando if Wendell Carter Jr. continues to have injury problems. Because he's been a little injury prone. So they could use a center. I mean, Bitadze has been decent this year, but they're in playoff position and they have a young core. Maybe that's a team, like you take on Jonathan Isaac's salary, cut him. I don't want him on the team. Yeah. But they got some salary to make it work. Like Orlando might be the best and they wouldn't need him to be. They got some forwards that can make plays, like that can feed him as a lob target, right? You can run some big pick and rolls. Like I actually think Orlando would be a team that would be interested in the fit there. But would they be interested in the contract?
Could you imagine Ayton on Miami? With Spoelstra kill him.
Spoelstra, dude. He would either become a superstar or like retire.
Yeah.
Heat culture would probably the latter. Heat culture would do its work on him. Oh my goodness, man.
Coach says the Pacers are your best bet. Why would they give up Miles Turner right now for Ayton, even though
they don't want Ayton anymore.
Yeah. Stanley says the Pistons are desperate until you remember that Monty Williams is their coach, and there's no chance that's happening.
And they got Jalen Duren, who's already better. Like,
yeah.
Worst loss of the season? Yes, this is worst loss of the season. It's hard to find destinations, man. It's tough. It's tough. We lost by 40 against OKC. Yes, but also, like, OKC is good. They're not a bad tanking team missing, like, 4/5 of its starting lineup. And we were healthier for this game than maybe any game except for opening night. Knicks. The thing is like, I can think of destinations, but I always try and think of it like, what team would want who we're trying to trade? Like, I always try and think about it from the other team's point of view. And honestly, if I'm any other team, I wouldn't trade for them. So it's really hard.
I don't necessarily think that. I think there are a few teams, much like what we heard from the Blazers front office this year, that think it's different if he's in their system or on their team or he fits better with our personnel. Yeah. I don't think the Warriors would trade for him.
Here's the thing, though. Phoenix, he didn't handle that situation right? Like, it was, Phoenix, it wasn't him. There were so many excuses for him, right? But it was like, he obviously clearly didn't handle adversity well, like, pouted during playoff games, effort plays, like, all that stuff is out there, right? So you can sit there and say, okay, maybe he wasn't happy with the situation because he didn't like Monty Williams, or like, Phoenix just wasn't the right team for him. Maybe he didn't like living in the city, yada, 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 whatever, et cetera, et cetera. Like, maybe it was a situation. If the same stuff happens in a second situation, teams are going to look at it less based on maybe it's the situation and more maybe it's just Ayton. That's the problem. It becomes harder and harder to move guys on big contracts when they burn more and more bridges.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, though, I don't know if he's necessarily burnt any bridges here in Portland completely, or like, at least not from other teams' perspectives or from national perspectives.
Yeah. At the end of the season, maybe he will have. I don't know.
Yeah, but maybe like that's why you should look to move him now. Is just, but I agree with you. Based on
But like, it
everything.
seems really like, why are you looking to trade this guy already? I thought you wanted him.
Yeah, well, you could just say like, hey, we thought we were going to be decent this year, so we had a bunch of guys that we thought we could make a run at the play in, and it's just not happening, and so we're pulling the chute and going towards more of a youth movement or looking for a big closer to Scoot and Sharp's age. I don't know. Just make something.
Shelvin Kumar says, we're acting like Ayton is giving us nothing. Sure, he's overpaid, but he's not bad. Other bad teams would take a chance on a productive young center. A team took a chance on Wiseman. They'll pay for DA. A, it's deeper than that with DA. B, Wiseman was making like $10 million and younger and less years on his contract.
Yeah,
he was making he was making like 3 times less money. And there's still hope that he just needed the right situation to break out. Now Wiseman has absolutely no value because like he hasn't broken out in Detroit either, so you can't say it's Golden State, right? And that's the exact same thing with DA. If a team wants to take a chance on DA, there's a good chance he ends up on that team then. So we will see. But he is definitely overpaid, and he makes no sense for this team. Because he's not going to break out into a star. And he's paid like a star. We should aim higher with our front court players. If we're going to pay him that much money. If not, then fine. Let's get a Visha Zubac who can make like $12 million a year then. And that way he won't dominate us again. Because he always dominates us. At least this season. So, yeah.
Yep.
Anyway,
and
go ahead.
So, I mean, admittedly, I got a few things wrong this summer, and I'm not perfect or whatever. But one thing I absolutely was correct upon, and that's what you touched upon a few minutes ago, and that was that this front office and ownership absolutely made like a PR. Made it more about public perception than it needed to be with Dame. And they were more concerned about Dame looking bad and them looking like they didn't have a choice than...
they were worried about Dame looking bad?
No, they were more worried about making Dame look bad than they were necessarily... concerned about getting the best for the trade or whatever. And egos got involved and all that kind of stuff. So I absolutely agree that they could have a trade right now where they got like a young asset and a first round pick or something for Ayton and an expiring contract, and it was the perfect trade. And I bet you they would not do it right now because they think that it would look bad to their fan base if they're trading Ayton 23 games into his first season here after they traded Dame for him, even though that's not technically accurate either. But
yeah, I mean, no team is going to even want to trade. If they do want to trade for him, they're not going to want to make a move until later on in the season, I think. So, it wouldn't happen soon anyway, but at some point, maybe optics are not as valued as much as other things.
Hopefully.
But
they're in a really tough spot, and this is why tonight was must win isn't the right term, but just this really bad performance tonight is just like they just can't seem to get anything right, because we beat the Jazz tonight. We have a bunch of home games tonight or coming up this month. But it would have been kind of feeling good. We would have been back to like, oh, how many of the next 5 games are they going to win? That kind of thing. And we'd be like, oh,
especially with how competitive their losses have been lately. We got build on that.
Yeah, we got Brogdon, Ayton back. We almost beat the Clippers. We almost beat the Warriors. This team has been playing good. They're right there. They just need to get over that little stretch they have where they can't score or whatever, and they need to get Sharp involved during that period, and maybe they can figure it out. Like, we'd be talking about all these things, and the fan base would still be kind of engaged. But when you start losing in this fashion to a team that's missing all their players and is, just as sorry this year as you are, or should be, and you just look completely outclassed out there, like, that starts to really weigh heavy. It's not only you're in a rebuild, but it's like this bad too, where you're getting booed at home and the crowd's just not really into the game and they're all frustrated watching you. Everyone on TV is frustrated watching you. That starts to play into things a little bit. And they absolutely thought that this team would be a little better. And that, they've had injuries and stuff, so you can maybe make a little bit of that excuse yet again. The injuries, we haven't had our full roster, all that kind of stuff, which is, once again, technically true. But they thought that this was going to be a more competitive team this year, not a bottoming out team this early. And I've seen a lot of questions like, it can't possibly be this bad, right? They're tanking on purpose, right? No, they are not tanking on purpose. They're just this bad. It's frustrating, man.
Yep. I mean, Cronin was called a genius for orchestrating this, so hopefully we start to see the fruits of his genius.
Well, I mean, he was a rock star at FanFest. People were asking him for autographs and
signing autographs, courtside. Yeah, for what? What is truly? What has he actually accomplished?
Well, for some people, I guess they wanted Dame ran out of town.
He's accomplished blowing up the team.
Yeah.
That's literally it. That's all, he's accomplished blowing up the team. And he still didn't blow it up in like probably the best possible way, right? So you gotta have foresight with a guy like Ayton. And you gotta understand what went wrong with a guy like Ayton in Phoenix. You know what I mean? And you gotta not get enamored by physical gifts, because there's so much more that goes into a player and his fit on the team, and you know what I mean? Like, and I just he makes trades like I feel like a average fan would make trades. Like, if you put an average fan in the front office and said, like, okay, make some moves, like, yeah, they would have gotten out leveraged by the Clippers and gave up Norman Powell and Rocco for second round picks and Keon Johnson.
Well,
like, they would have, they would have made that trade for Thibault. They would have, made that trade for Cam Reddish, and then they would have made that trade for Ayton, right? Like, it's just, I don't know, man. I don't know.
Here's the thing, and I mean, you and I are smart enough to figure this out. We might not be smart in every asset of our lives. I mean, I'm not saying we're like smarter than anyone else, but
we're actually like 20 IQ, but go on.
Yeah, trade deadline, his first trade deadline, 2021. People were talking about all this flexibility and stuff. And we sat here, I have a video saying we don't have cap space, and everyone's like, what are you talking about? 60 million in cap space. Look at all this flexibility we have. We're going to sign all these free agents, or we're going to make all these trades and all this stuff, right? And
yeah.
And we're sitting here saying, no, we don't. We're going to re-sign. We're going to re-sign Nurk, and we're going to re-sign Anthony, and we're gonna make a trade for someone like Jeremy Grant, and we're gonna have no cap space, right? And we're actually gonna be put right back into fighting the tax again and making decisions. We called that back in February, 4 months before the offseason even happened.
It wasn't even a call. It was just knowing the situation.
Yeah, like we said that, and we got so much crap for it, like, well, you got what? You wanted to keep CJ and Norm. You wanted to keep doing this 3 guard crap. Like we had all this stuff, right?
Yeah.
And we're like, no, it wasn't about wanting to keep them or not. It's that the trades they made did not set themselves up to build around Dame, even though they sold all of us or tried to sell all of us on the fact that these moves didn't make sense then, but once we show you what the final product is, it'll all make sense and you'll be like, wow, that was really impressive how you made this happen so that down the road you can make this happen. And so fast forward to the next offseason or the next trade deadline, right? And we sat here before Cronin even spoke. We tried to say that this summer they got rid of everyone that had a contract or salary that was tradable, and they didn't take on any salary because of the cap situation, and they wanted to stay out of the tax for this season. That was very clear at the trade deadline last year that they were already concerned about the cap space for this year. And what did we hear? No, that isn't true. They are 100% going to the tax next year for Dame. They're going to go all in. They are just staying out of the repeater tax this year so it doesn't get triggered next year and blah, blah, blah. And Cronin even said that too. But we were sitting there on that day saying they put us in a situation where they like Anthony's the only asset they have to trade, and they're going to overvalue Anthony and they're not going to trade him, and which you can say is the right or wrong move, but they don't have like a $12 million Wiseman contract to trade out with the third pick to get someone good and not have to trade Anthony or whatever. And then the value when you're trading Anthony and Scoot isn't good enough in a trade, and then like you're kind of stuck. And they kept trying to say, no, we have all these assets. We got 5 second-round picks. And we kept saying, what are you attaching them to? You can't just trade second-round picks for like, whatever player you want to insert, Jaylen Brown or whatever. You can't trade first and second-round picks. You have to match salary in a trade when you make those moves. And we kept trying to say that wasn't happening. And then they trade for Ayton, and the first thing I say is this is going to cost them making trades where they get assets like a rebuilding team like the Thunder do, because they're already projected to be fighting into the tax next season with all this situation. And so it's not that the trades themselves, if you just look at them, are bad. It's that they don't seem to figure out how making moves, you need to do it a different way to set yourself up to make those all-in moves or the better moves later. And then what do they say when they can't make those moves later? It's, oh, what were we supposed to do? There were no good offers. But no, you made it so there wasn't going to be any good offers, and we could have told you that months ago.
Because what it is there's an opportunity cost with every trade, right? Where if you just look on paper, again, DeAndre in that trade, like, sure, that's great, but his contract comes with an opportunity cost that eliminates your ability to make other types of moves that could be better in the long run for this team. And that's the problem, is every trade is just viewed in a vacuum, right? You got an ESPN article that has a grade for each trade, like based on, for the most part, the value they got back. There's hidden opportunity cost to every trade, and that's why you need to have a cohesive plan and a cohesive direction so you can understand how each move falls in line with your broader plan, because they all come with some sort of opportunity cost. So that's the problem, is trades like that is, I don't know, you got to set yourself up. You got to have a plan. Like, a lot of moves will set up future moves. They have to be cohesive with each other. You can't just go out here like it's 2K and make random trades and expect everything to come together. It doesn't work like that.
So RWNW3 says, like, what, though? They don't get free agents. Well, that's why in the new cap situation, especially, teams are going to have to attach assets. Look, there's numerous examples even before the new CBA. Like when the Warriors got Durant, they gave Memphis a first-round pick for taking on Iguodala's contract.
Yeah.
There's been all kinds of those. There's going to be more and more of those as teams try to stay out of that second apron, and you're gonna be able to take on salary if you have cap space available. I mean, that's how the Thunder got most of their picks.
Mm-hmm.
Like they took on salary just like Utah gave him a first for taking on Derek Favors' contract a couple years ago. Like just because they had money to do it, you know? And they took on Al Horford. They get an asset for taking on Al Horford, and then they trade Al Horford again and get a first for trading him after they've got an asset for getting him. Like it's just stuff like that, and that's what you miss out on. And also, I mean, it's stuff like what Detroit did to get Jalen Duren, who you mentioned earlier. Like, we could have done that same trade with New York because we had that trade exception and couldn't have absorbed those two contracts that New York wanted to give up. So we could be sitting here with a creative GM that got Jalen Duren, and I saw a question in here, should we have got traded Dame when we traded CJ and Norm and stuff? Well, I mean, you can look at that two ways. One is if you're planning on rebuilding this whole time, which I tend to lean towards, it might not have been at the 2021 deadline, but sometime shortly after that, they definitely got eyes for rebuilding and started pushing Dame out and lying. So I think, yeah, you got to start making moves for your future at that point, and then you might be in a much better position right now. But I absolutely think that they should have moved Dame earlier if they were going to do this. I think they waited too long. But all in all, they did get pretty good value for him. I just think they should maximize that value, or should have, by flipping Brogdon and Robert Williams, and they ended up not doing that, and it's going to cost them because they're not going to get anything for Robert Williams now. But yeah, they definitely should trade Brogdon and Grant, and if there's an offer for Ayton, they should trade him this year because those guys aren't going to be around or part of a championship team in like 2 or 3 years. They're just not going to be a part of it, no matter how good those guys are. And I like Brogdon as a player. I like Grant as a player. I'm not saying that those guys have been bad or terrible or anything like that. I just think you should move on and go with the younger version. Look at Taylor Hendricks tonight. Like, that guy's not getting a ton of minutes on Utah, but like he's got some skills, man. That guy can play. Ochai Agbaji, like I know you didn't really like him coming out of the draft, but he's been solid when he's got minutes. Yeah, he's been good. Like, I'd rather give minutes to those kind of guys and just develop them and see if you can and find your next Tamani Kamara and give him minutes, you know, and just keep getting guys like that than these vets that you know, whatever. If we're going to lose to the Jazz, I'd rather it be because we're playing all kinds of young guys and developing them instead of trying to win.
The thing is, we got 2 vets back today, and we looked worse than we've looked basically all season. So, yeah, might as well play the young guys. I think the effort level probably would have been better without, you know, bringing back Ayton and Brogdon. If you have Reith starting, I mean, Reith plays hard. I'll give him that. You know, I'm not blaming those guys specifically for the effort issues. It's just when it was just a bunch of young dudes, we played pretty hard. So, even last game we played hard. Tonight, I don't know what the hell happened, man. Hopefully this is a one-off. The next game becomes very intriguing to see how they respond to this, because they got a home game against Dallas, which is a good team. They're 15-9 right now. So How do they respond? I'm not sure, but it's going to be fascinating to watch. Rookies did good today, though. Like Reith, Kamara, and Scoot. 3 leading scorers for the Blazers.
Yeah, we haven't talked about Scoot much. We should probably talk about it.
Yeah, so 9 for 21 from the field in 35 minutes, 2 for 7 from 3, 10 assists, 4 turnovers, 2.5 to 1 assist to turnover ratio. You will take that. Had, 3 dunks in this game? I mean, you started to see a little bit of Scoot Henderson in terms of, dunking the ball, so that was nice. What'd you notice tonight?
Well, that's not necessarily that he dunked it, but those 3 plays, that was the Scoot. I was finally like, oh, okay, Scoot, there you are.
Yeah.
Because those are the type of plays that have been missing all season that I'd seen him do in the past, and a couple of those. There was one where he kind of almost came to a stop, and I think the defender thought he was going to pull up from the mid range like he'd been doing, and then he just hit the gas and went right by him and got a dunk.
Yeah, what is that, Eric? That's a change of pace. I dropped a whole article on 750 about that very thing. And I'll say this. So he's working on that. He had comments about it. People talked about it in chat. He recognizes that is a thing he needs to work on. And supposedly, he's been working his ass off this season. His work ethic is not something to worry about. Yeah. That's why I wasn't really stressing about Scoot or really worried about it. One post-game show, I said I'm slightly worried, and then the next game he plays great. People were like, you were worried, dumbass? Okay, I've been preaching patience on him all year for that reason, because he works hard, okay? Obviously, you need to know what you need to work on. Change of pace is so huge for him. You got to be able to change pace in the NBA as a 6'2 guard. Dropped a whole article on 750. If you guys want to read it, I will plug it in the description and in the chat. But I kind of went into depth on why it's important for him. And tonight, I mean, the last 2 games, I think he's played with much better pace, and it's no coincidence it's his best 2 games.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I was impressed with him tonight. Had a couple of bad turnovers, had a couple of bad defensive possessions, but I think tonight was one of the first games where it was like, okay, I can see on the court in an NBA game how he could eventually be a really good player. And he's had his moments this year, but making a mid-range jumper or whatever, I mean, anyone can do that, really. It's not necessarily something that's going to determine if he's a star. I mean, obviously, if you're really good at it, it helps. But he's still a little rough on the fast break, like Garmin points out. I think we have a lot of that problem. I don't know how many assists Anthony ended up with today.
He had 6.
6 assists in 22 minutes.
22 minutes.
Yeah, that's pretty good. I felt like he was passing the ball pretty good today. But Scoot. I mean, it's still a little clunky. It still feels like at times he's my age with bad knees and can't move very well. It's really weird, but then he's also the quickest player on the court at times. So it doesn't make any sense. But
I think he gets stuck when he tries to break down defenders. He gets stuck in he doesn't have the most optimal stance in a way, and he just kind of gets stuck in his stance. So there's footwork things to improve on with his size up game and some off the dribble stuff, for sure. But the change of pace is huge for him, man. It makes it easier for him to read the floor too, because he's not going at breakneck speed. And I talked about that. He had a really bad game a couple of games ago, and I talked about that, and immediately best 2 performances where he controls the pace. We hear about him working on it. That's why you guys tune into this show, because we will break down that sort of stuff. And that's why we're not, people know us as pretty emotional guys, but we always try and think about everything logically. With Scoot, it was never a situation where I was even close to being ready to call him a bust or this or that or any of that reactionary crap that other, hot take shows out there, especially NBA ones, will do for clicks. Never make views. I never have opinions for clicks. And with Scoot, it's just, there's very specific things he needs to learn. Obviously, he needs to be able to shoot, so defenders defend him all the way on the 3-point line, because it makes it easier to beat him downhill. And then he also has to play under more control and play with better pace. Because like you said, that little stop and go in the mid-range, will get defenders cheating up and will open up the drive to the rim. If the defender's waiting at the rim and you do that and you get them leaning forward, it's easier to beat them to the rim. If you just drive 100 miles an hour at their chest, you're getting stonewalled. And you're going to throw up some crap.
A few times against Walker Kessler tonight. Walker Kessler blocked like 2 or 3 of his shots because he just went right into him.
Yep. Being able to effectively change pace is the most underrated skill a guard can have in basketball. And Scoot didn't have it yet. In the G League, at a lower level, he didn't need it. Because his athletic gifts were even more of a separator, and that's what I talked about in that article. Like, it was more of a difference maker because those aren't the best athletes in the world, the best basketball players in the world. The NBA is. So his quickness and athleticism isn't as special as it is on the G League level, and defenders are smarter, defenders are bigger, defenders are better. So you got to have that nuance to your game. You got to have that change of pace. That's the key for Scoot. That'll help. That'll make Scoot look much, much better. But that's the reason why he hasn't looked like Scoot in the G League, because Scoot in the G League could just play at 100 miles an hour and make things happen. Scoot in the NBA can't play at 100 miles an hour and make things happen the same way.
Yeah. I was thinking, and it doesn't make sense because Scoot wasn't a good shooter prior to this. But I was thinking, like, he hurt his shoulder this summer. Like, is there maybe a little bit of, like, the same kind of thing Markelle Fultz went through?
Yeah.
Where, like, he's just not confident or something mechanically doesn't feel the same when he goes to shoot that it did prior to the injury. And it's kind of messing with both his form and his head. So hopefully maybe as the season goes on, he gets healthier and gets a little more confident, he can do that. Because Fultz has actually turned himself into a really good player. He's just kind of injury prone and isn't super consistent. But when he's healthy and has played, he's actually become a really good player. So, I mean, it'd be disappointing to say that he's Markelle Fultz right now in a few years, but hopefully he can kind of get back on track like Fultz did.
Yeah, absolutely. Kamara, great today. He hit threes, had a couple impressive drives. You love to see that. 7 for 10 from the field, 3 for 4 from 3, 18.6 rebounds. His offensive development is one of the more crucial things this season. It's more crucial than we expected it to be because we didn't expect him to be this good defensively. He didn't really help the team defensively today, but, he's proven himself to be an NBA-level defender. So now it's just, can he add the offense with it? It was nice to see that tonight.
See, this is where we talked about this last post-game show, I think it was, where when he's playing the 4 and he's playing the same role defensively as when he's been playing the 3 with Grant, it kind of messes up the defense because there was lineups today where, Brogdon comes in after a few minutes and they have Anthony, Sharp, Brogdon, and then Kamara is playing the 4, and he's guarding the guy up top. And it's like, well, he can't guard the point guard in that situation because then that puts like Brogdon and Anthony, and then we're trying to guard Olynyk and stuff like that. It just like doesn't make a lot of sense. Like you gotta play more straight up if he's at the 4, and I think that's something that, again, Chauncey's really struggled at as a coach is he just gets this thing like, oh, I want my longest, best defender on the ball, which is good in some situations, but when you're playing small lineups elsewhere, it's just makes it really tough because Kamara's always up top, and then you got 3 guards and Ayton or Reith or whoever on as the other 4 players behind him, and you just can't be as effective at the point of attack if the backside of the defense is so much smaller than the players they're trying to guard.
Yep. Absolutely. So love to see him have a good offensive game though. On top of that.
Chauncey's press conference just dropped. Yeah, I wonder how he polished this one.
Yeah, I'll listen to it after the stream. You guys can listen to it after the stream and let me know your thoughts. You can tweet at me at Jones YT. We need to do Tankathon. I'm going to read donos. That segues into it. yeah, follow us on Twitter. Links in the description box below. I'm at Torey Jones YT, Torey Jones YT. Eric is at Hoops Jock. Channel is at Blazers Uprise YT. Also, join our Discord. Link in the description box below. It's a cool, chill place to hang out with some other Blazer fans and talk about basketball, talk about anything. So definitely join the Discord. Link in the description. We're trying to get that to 1,000 members. We're at like 750-ish, somewhere in there, I think. Would be cool to hit 1,000 because then we get our own like link, our own custom link to it. So help us out. Join the Discord. Come hang out with the community, which the community is awesome. I love the community that we built. Shout out to Jack M. $5 donation says, somehow scoreboard watching the Warriors and watching their draft pick climb on Tankathon has been the highlight of the season. Thanks, Draymond. Yeah, freaking Draymond. God, freaking Draymond, man. Shout out to him for getting indefinitely suspended for punching Nurk on accident. So, like, all right, bro. Thank you, Jack, for the $5 donation. Tankathon in a second, and we'll take a look at that pick. And then shout out Pim Arose. $20 donation says, happy Christmas. Thank you, Pim. Appreciate you. Thank you for the 20 bomb.
Thank you, everyone. Happy holidays.
Draymond's like the new Ron Artest. Yeah, at least he hasn't fought a fan yet, but who would put it past him once he comes back, you know? So he's been, we talked about it on our live stream earlier today, which is on our second channel, link in description. Everything is in description. Check out the description for everything. We talked about it on the stream. I said he's dematuring. He's getting worse. Grayson Allen's gotten better. Like, he's not as bad as he was when he was young regarding dirty crap like that. Draymond Green's gotten worse. So, he's dematuring. I didn't know the other word for that. Like, the opposite of maturing. Unmaturing? I don't know. But thank you, Pim, for the 20 once again. And let's Tankathon, Eric.
All right, let's do it.
We need theme music for Tankathon. Let's see here. Connect this one. Should just play the Blazers Uprise trumpets, because we are tanking legends. The hip hop remix that we got though is shout out to Sundo for making that beat like a while ago. That's been a nice little asset to have. Okay, Tankathon, Eric.
Let's do it.
Portland 10th.
1-10. Let's go.
Tied with Golden State. Portland, or not tied with Golden State. Tied with Toronto. Golden State and Toronto are tied. Those picks go to Portland and San Antonio. So Portland right now would have the 10th pick and the 4th pick if nothing changed. But it's extremely unlikely to stay at 4 if you're the 4th place team, because that would mean no teams move up into the top 4. And you don't move up into the top 3. So the odds of staying at 4 is like 2% or something extremely, extremely low. Portland is tied with Memphis at 4. So 11.5% chance the number 1 overall pick, 45% chance top 4. This 11.5% chance, it's not like, man, 11.5% chance to get Wemby, because there's like no Wemby in this draft class. So it's like, okay, if we get one, cool. But also if we get one, we'd probably find a way to mess it up somehow. So I kind of want like, I don't know. I want Sar, but I don't know. Like I'm cool with 2. 2 is good. 3 is good. This draft is weird. Anyway, let's simulate it. We can talk about any prospects Eric's looked at lately. 14 New Orleans, 13 Phoenix, 12 Cleveland, 11 Toronto, 10 Portland via Golden State, so they keep the pick. 9 Atlanta, 8 Chicago, 7 Utah. 6 is Charlotte. 5 is Washington, moving down 2 spots. So Portland's in the top 4. At 4 is Memphis. At 3 is Detroit. At 2 is your Portland Trailblazers. And at 1 is San Antonio again. They get Alex Sarr and Wemby together.
You think they'd take Sarr?
Sarr with Wemby. Both are French. Like, I mean, I would take Sarr with Wemby. You kidding me? That would be dirty. Play Zach Collins at the 3, Sohan at the point.
Duncan and Robinson.
I mean, sit here. I mean, at this point, like, I guess you take Sarr or Holland, whoever's left, and then at 10, you hope Cody Williams is there. Although at 10, like, I need to fall in love with some other prospects, because, like, if we take Holland, Cody Williams would make less sense, you know?
Yeah.
If we took a 4 or 5, Cody Williams would make more sense.
according to Ben Pfeiffer on Twitter, Cody Williams is not a first-round
That
pick.
dude's
So.
takes are very questionable. That's all I'm gonna say.
Wait, wasn't that the one who said Reith was good at defense too?
Yeah, that's what
Same
I
guy.
wanted. Yeah,
Yeah.
like all right, bro. I'm not super high on Almanza at 10. I mean, Klingon, I wouldn't hate Klingon at 10. Ware, I don't know. Like, none of these names I'm in love with at 10, honestly. But that'll change at some point, so. Anyway, that wraps up Tankathon. Anything else for the stream, Eric?
Appreciate everyone watching. Even after a game like tonight. Yeah, I guess we're just hoping for luck in the lottery at this point, right?
Yep, Tankathon all season long. We'll have another lottery watch party. Maybe we can get a bigger, better venue, and it can be sponsored.
What hurts more right now, Tori? Blazers or Mariners this Arcadian?
Oh god, dude. Mariners, because I actually had hope for them, and they are so cheap that I legitimately don't want to pay attention to them. And they said their goal is to win 54% of their games. Like, oh my god. Mariners are the worst team of mine right now. They're a joke. Blazers are a close second.
No, he didn't mean to say that out loud, Tori. He wanted that to be a secret.
What?
That they only care about winning 54% of the game.
Oh yeah, God. Ugh. That organization
Are
is a joke.
they going to do anything? Are they really going to just not spend
Dude.
money after saying that this season they would?
They raised ticket prices going into the year, and then they recently raised them again, while legitimately shedding salary and just being the cheapest organization in MLB. It is absolutely such a joke. So many fans are canceling season tickets. Like, it's bad. It's real bad. They had such a bright future. They just needed to add a couple bats and could have been a World Series contender for the next decade. They are running that organization into the ground. So, the only game I would go to is if there was an organized group on opening day where we had enough people where we could sit there and chant "sell" at the game. Like the Oakland A's fans did, and freaking protest this ownership group because they're a freaking joke. Freaking joke. Yeah, they made $80 million of profit in 2022. Like, they made the most profit last year of any MLB team, and then they raised prices twice in the offseason and shed salary. Garben, that's because Seattle died. That is a ridiculously silly comment, bro. Come on, man. That not only does that make no sense, it also is completely false. Like, what were you saying, bro? Anyway, Mariners. My DoorDash is here. I'm done talking about the Mariners, bro. Seattle's not dead. Portland's not dead. The Blazers look dead today.
Yeah, Blazers were dead today.
Sorry to upset you, Tory Group Therapy, man. Hey, you didn't upset me. The Mariners upset me, man. The Mariners upset me. So, yeah, nice to rant a little bit about it. But, yeah. Garben, the Mariners are not being cheap because of the culture, bro. They're not being cheap because Seattle has no culture. All right? I don't know what you're talking about. Anyway, we're out of here. This has been a fun post-game show. We'll have another one on Saturday. Once again, thank you to BetUS for sponsoring this post-game show. Use the link. What's up?
And Sunday.
Saturday and Sunday, yep. Once again, thank you to BetUS for sponsoring this post-game show. Use the link at the top of the description box below, and you'll receive 125% deposit match, so you'll get free money to play with, to try your hand at any type of betting, bunch of different types of sports. So check them out. I appreciate them for sponsoring the show. With that being said, we are out of here. Once again, link for that 750 article is in the description box below as well if you guys want to read my latest work on Scoot Henderson and his need to change pace. He had another great game today. Back-to-back career best games for him, so love to see it, but this team was awful tonight. We'll see if they can do better on Saturday, and until then, as always, peace out. Go Blazers!